We're live?
Yeah, I mean, we technically have 1:16, but...
Yeah, but the thing is, we're ready.
And the people are dying to see us.
Why is Hesham calling? It's too early. So we have another minute. Should we just...
It's plenty of time to...
Should we just kill it and just start?
Let's just do it. Reward the people. Well, yeah.
I mean, but now people feel...
I mean, it is 1:31.
What if they go, like, if I saw this and I needed to go to the bathroom or I needed to grab a cup of coffee, I would do it.
We give them 45 seconds.
And then I would feel betrayed if I came back and it's on.
That's very fair. All right.
Man.
Okay. We wait.
All right, let's just mute again, just in case we say something inappropriate. Let's do it again.
Back to the top.
We were so ready way before the show that when we started, we actually had the mute button on.
Okay. Hello and welcome to all of our viewers around the world. I'm MK Smith.
And I'm Bassam Haddad.
And we are so excited to be back together again for episode 2.5 of Live with ASI, a month of knowledge production. I missed you, Bassam.
I miss you too, MK.
Thank you.
MK? MK, right?
That is my name. Thank you for remembering.
I was going to say Kate. And I realized
Kate is half correct.
We haven't seen each other for such a long time. Okay, well, we're going to go to the intro. Welcome to LWA.
We have a great show for you all today with Pedagogy, new installments in the 10 Years On project, a series on Amazigh indigeneity, a sort of brand new podcast on the generation of the Iranian Revolution, our usual grad student corner with Cat Haseman, and a new episode of the Connections podcast, as well as engaging interviews with Hesham Sallam, Basileus Zeno, Nadya Sbaiti, Zachary Foster, Brahim el Guabli, and Manijeh Nasrabadi.
As always, all of the content MK and I covered during this episode can be found in the episode digest to be published in the coming days, so keep your eyes peeled. I don't say ever.
Keep your eyes peeled?
I never use this, but thanks, Muhammad, for making me sound a bit sophisticated.
Good. Without further ado, let's get started on a high note. We are very happy to share with everyone that Jadaliyya is now officially 11 years old. And I exited out of the slide.
All right, so we are very excited that this is the case, and I am very happy to share that one of the things that is different about this particular 11 years anniversary. What you laughing at?
We're laughing at the fact that we checked everything to make sure it was fine, and my computer just decided to restart.
Oh.
It's okay.
It's okay. Over the last 11 years, Jadaliyya has grown tremendously in ways we truly could never have imagined, especially when we started with the start button that made us go live, and we were wondering whether people will be reading, and within a few months, Jadaliyya, within a few weeks, it actually exploded. And then within a few months, with the start of the Arab uprisings, we went through the stratosphere in terms of the readership that we encountered and was engaged with the site. So it was nothing that we expected, and we are very happy that we were able to capture that niche in a way that most other online publications were not doing, because we were mainly a publication that had its own where are you going up?
I'm going down. Where are you going?
Because I'm not reading.
Oh, you haven't read. Okay.
This is ad lib.
Cool.
Okay, so one of the most distinguishing factors of Jadaliyya is that our writers, as well as readers, but our writers are also based in the region. So it was read and engaged with as a local publication. Stay on the lookout for an 11th anniversary post which chronicles all of this on Jadaliyya, and it will highlight a year of knowledge production focusing on this past year, and will celebrate many of the activities and activists, journalists, scholars who have collaborated and published scholarship over the past year here on Jadaliyya.
All of this before I was even 14 years old.
Don't say that.
So fun, so fun. We are now very fortunate to be joined with one of Jadaliyya's co-editors, Hesham Sallam. Welcome.
Hi, Hesham.
Oh,
You're muted.
did we mute? That's our bad.
You are muted, Hesham. You're still muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Good morning. Still muted?
No, you're good now.
Good morning or good afternoon, Bassam and MK. Good morning where I am. I guess it's good afternoon where you guys are.
Hello, hello. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Hesham, we would like you to just share with us any of the thoughts you have that you usually address during these occasions. So we're going to leave the mic to you. You're also muted. Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say that, so yes, we're celebrating 11 years of Jadaliyya. It's Jadaliyya's 11-year anniversary. But we're also celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Egypt page. The Egypt page was launched in November 2011. I was also 14 MK at the time. And it was a really monumental moment in the history of the upheaval that was happening in Egypt at the time. There was at that moment we launched, or the Egypt page launched, on the springboard of a project that we launched jointly with Ahram Online to cover the Egyptian elections at the time, and to provide kind of a critical lens through which we can analyze the election and the political context in which it was happening. So it's important to mention here that yes, elections were happening in Egypt, but also a large deal of contention was happening between revolutionary movements as well as other political organizations on the one hand, and the military on the other. And Jadaliyya was, or at least Jadaliyya's Egypt page was stepping in at that particular moment in time. You're saying something, but I can't hear you.
Muhammad, to change the volume a bit.
Don't mind us.
Got it. So at any rate, we stepped in, and what is important, I won't take up too much of your time, but I'll just focus on a couple of points. The first point being is that when Jadaliyya was launched, or at least when Jadaliyya's Egypt page was launched, a lot of the things that we take for granted at the present time, like the ability for a lot of junior researchers and scholars to publish and to present their ideas to a wide audience, was not available, or was largely unavailable at the time. And Jadaliyya was stepping in at a moment when I feel there was this, for lack of a better term, democratizing effect in terms of the ability of young scholars to be able to share their ideas, to be able to be part of a broader conversations about the upheaval that was happening in Egypt at the time. And I think Jadaliyya's Egypt page was launched in that spirit, and Jadaliyya at large. I think Jadaliyya's Egypt page experience was exemplifying a broader trend that was happening in Jadaliyya at the time. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Jadaliyya Egypt page was the first specialized page that we launched. I think the Syria page came shortly thereafter, but Egypt is where it all started.
Allah.
Also, the second, yeah, takbir. The other point that I want to emphasize is the fact that Jadaliyya Egypt page, it really emerged out of an organic connection that was already happening inside Egypt. I think there were a variety of group of writers, young researchers that were already writing for Jadaliyya, presenting new and cutting edge ideas about what was happening in Egypt at the time, about the historical legacies that Egypt were inheriting from the Mubarak era and even before then, and that were really being pronounced in the post 2011 context. And it was very much an Egyptian project. I mean, I remember at the time people in Egypt. So, as you all know, in various parts of Jadaliyya, or at least among the editorial team, we would refer to it as Jadaliyya. In certain parts of the United States, people would call it Jadaliyya. But in Egypt, which speaks to that organic connection that the Egypt page had with a community of Egyptian researchers, people would actually call it Jadaliyya. And in that spirit, I mentioned, we launched that joint project with Ahram Online. We also had a great deal of collaboration with Egypt Independent, or the team that eventually led the experiment of Mada Masr, which was launched about a couple years later. It kind of speaks to that organic connection that the Egypt page team and the community of writers that the Egypt page came to embody and came to magnify and channel, how that community was very much connected to Egypt at the time.
Hisham, I know that a story you keep repeating is when I first called you in summer 2010.
Yes, I remember when Bassam. Well, actually, it was you didn't call me. We ran into each other at CCAS at Georgetown. We were sitting on those. For those of you who are familiar with the so-called geography of CCS, we were sitting right there in the lounge on those couches, and Bassam was telling me, Habibi, I've got this great new project. It's gonna be great, and it will only take 10 minutes of your time, Habibi. Just 10 minutes.
It was 15.
It will
I
not
said
take
15.
any it will not take longer, and it's going to be great, Habibi. And it ended up taking a lot more than 10 minutes of my time.
11 years.
Especially when the time had come to launch the Egypt page. I feel like that was actually my whole entire life. And as you know, like the Egypt page, obviously, when we first launched at that moment, yours truly and Muhammad Waqid, Egyptian scholar and longtime Egyptian revolutionary socialist, we were at the helm of the Egypt page at that moment in time, and then later on we've expanded and we've added the great and wonderful Rima Abul Fadl to the team, or we were able to talk her into joining the team based on the understanding that it will take 10 minutes only of her time. And then later on, Adel Iskandar also, who was already involved in Jadaliyya on the media page, he became part of the, I can't even pinpoint a date when he became part of the Egypt page. I feel like he was always there. So Adel Iskandar joined in, and then a few years ago, we were very fortunate to be able to convince other colleagues, as well, including Amr Adli and Wael Gamal, to also join the Egypt page, based on an understanding that will only take 10 minutes of their time a week.
10 minutes turned to 10 years so quickly. We love when that happens.
Thank you so much, Hisham.
Just like this interview.
We always love having you on, and thanks for all these stories and anecdotes. I want to thank all the 17 co-editors of Jadaliyya who launched the project, including the first 5 that sort of were the core, that then expanded to 10 and then 12, and now we're at 17. We will have in the digest a full review of everybody that is on the co-editors page, as well as on other pages that have developed over the last 10 years. Shukran كتير Hisham, and hope to see you soon here on LWA.
Thank you, and happy birthday, Jadaliyya.
Salam.
So as Bassam mentioned, we encourage our audience to keep an eye out for a year encompassing roundup of all the knowledge produced on Jadaliyya during its 10th year, going into its 11th, and that will be coming out soon. And lucky number 11, we are now on the 11th month of the year-long collaborative 10 Years On Mass Protests and Uprisings and the Arab World Project. Last week, the 10 Years On project held a panel titled Displacement, Disruption, and Scholarly Production, where scholars from the region discussed the specific effects of displacement on cultural and knowledge production in the region following the 2011 uprisings.
The panelists looked at the many impacts of authoritarian retrenchment and targeting of universities through the region, and spoke of to their own experiences as scholars and academics.
With us now is one of the panel's participants, Basileus Zeno, who is the Carl Lowenstein Fellow and visiting lecturer in political science at Amherst College. Welcome, Basileus.
Marhaba, Basil. Basil, you're on mute.
Oh, no.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
Okay,
Ahlan wa
sorry. I was on
sahlan.
mute.
Welcome to
I
LWA.
was just-
If you can share with us some of your thoughts about that panel from 10 Years On.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for bringing me in, and it's always like a pleasure, like to have a conversation with you both, like MK and Bassam. The event, I think it's unique in terms of addressing a serious structural problem that scholars from the global south are facing, specifically those who went through waves of displacement. So I want to address two quick points here that captures basically the essence of why we had this meeting and conversation with other scholars from Turkey, and they are from Kurdish scholars from Iran, Syria, Yemen, Palestine, and unfortunately many other, Iraq and many other countries, and now Afghanistan, of course. So the two main issues here, following the Arab Spring and the subsequent conflict, and now we are talking about a decade-long crisis. So there are two kind of first-hand experiences that many everyday people basically experience. One is the disruption in terms of education for their children, and if specifically primary and secondary schools. And the second is basically higher education. And with the experience of those inside the country, inside Syria, for instance, there are disruption in terms of education, massive destruction of infrastructure, bombardment using like the regime's use of airplanes, for instance. Also the ideological war over curriculum, so that there are at least 5 to 6 school curriculum that have been instrumentalized and weaponized in a way to construct the enemy other. And most children basically went through multiple waves of displacement and disruptions, in addition to lack of security and safety and kidnapping and many other factors. When it comes to higher education, that was my basically personal experience and my colleague in the panel, where you move into a different structure, mostly like in the context of the United States, where all your experiences in the past aren't recognized. So you are reduced into a mere like I'm not going to say like victim, but the structure aims to construct you as a victim, because we have our competency, we have our own experiences, we have our knowledge about our own region. Nevertheless, you have to start from scratch. Personally, I was a PhD candidate in archaeology. In 2014, unfortunately, Damascus University dismissed me from the program without notification. So basically that ended like 10 to 12 years of accumulated experience. And I had to pursue another passion, which is political science in particular here. But starting from scratch, as if I finished like my BA and then I started immediately. So there are constraints that we face here collectively. The second factor that I want to wrap up with this idea is mobility. So scholars coming from displaced conditions and scholars at risk, so had difficulties in terms of conducting research and travel outside the United States, for instance. I haven't been able to travel like for 9 years, which affected my case selection, my theory, my methodology, and basically my own community and my ethnographic fieldwork. So, and this is coming from basically the context of racialized borders and violence that is taking the form of legal violence in the United States. So, which leaves the space actually for scholars who are basically with the proper documents as citizens of the countries from the global north to conduct basically work that basically scholars from the region are incapable to do due to these restrictions. So that was the essence of this panel, where we all shared our experiences and how we have been affected by retaliation from authoritarian regime on the one hand, and also from the context of white structure in the United States and Europe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, my friend. We look forward to having you on the show again. And for all of our listeners who are interested in learning more about this panel and checking it out themselves, you can head on over to Jadaliyya.com.
Thank you so much. It's great seeing you.
Revolution and historical.
We were muted, so we're going to start that from the top.
In March of this year, the Centers for Middle East Studies at Harvard University and the University of California, Santa Barbara, held a roundtable titled Archives, Revolution, and Historical Thinking as part of the 10 Years On project. The participants published their contributions to the roundtable in Jadaliyya last month. So be sure to check it out in the digest. Everything will be listed with the hyperlinks. It's a fantastic roundtable, and it will be followed by a couple of other roundtables that we are publishing shortly on Jadaliyya.
Now, as Jadaliyya co-editor Shireen Saili remarks in the editor's introduction, this roundtable brought together a variety of esteemed scholars to reflect on the relationships between revolutions, archives, and how we think about history. Each scholar addresses these questions from the perspective of a different country, such as Syria, Iran, Iraq, Algeria, and Egypt. We are very, very happy to have one of the roundtable's contributors and Jadaliyya co-founding co-editor, Nadya Sbaiti, to tell us more. Welcome, Nadya.
Hello.
Hi, Bassam. Hi, MK. Thank you so much. It's great to see you guys.
Great to see you, too. Could you tell us a little bit about this roundtable for our listeners?
Certainly. And first of all, مبروك Nadya, لأنه أنا, because I know that you were one of the the 5 people that we were all talking about this, and I kept insisting that as Hesham shared before we even reached out to Hesham, it was you, Noura, Sinan, and Maya and Shireen that we addressed this project with. So you've been there from the very beginning. You helped lift everything up and bring in these other fantastic co-editors. So ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you for that, Bassam. And we are only as good as the folks we work with. So it's all of us going together. Yeah. So the roundtable brought together or brings together a number of historians, as you were saying in your introduction, MK, writing about different places in the region, from Iran to Algeria, to ask what possibility looks like. And one of the ways that we do that is by reflecting on the present moment of upheaval and uprising in the context of multiple pasts, and by reflecting on those pasts in the wake of the present. So we're all really concerned with the stakes of archiving these particular moments in all of this range of geographical and temporal contexts. All of the participants have been thinking about history and the stakes involved in archiving it from within, individually and together, this moment of layered, kind of profound crises, as we all know and are very familiar with. And what we're doing on this roundtable is sort of questioning what it means to reflect on and to write history from that point of reference. And we're each kind of, I think, in her own way, thinking about the ways that context affects how we read, interpret, and otherwise feel emotively, affectively, different types of historical sources and how we actually feel history. Archives, right, and the use of historical sources in some ways relies on an understanding of time passing. But I think what this roundtable does is helps to remind us that historians are often working in conditions where time also seems to have collapsed, right, in a lot of ways. And I think this is something that we can all kind of relate to over the last 18 months or so. The participants, each one of the participants, I think, reminds us that sources of history can take very different creative forms, and that it's worth remembering that it's not just one thing. It doesn't just look like one type of even written document, right? There's photographs, there's sound, there's scent, even in certain degrees. And the conditions under which these sources and archives are compiled greatly influence the mode with which they're used by later researchers, assuming, of course, that they're accessible to researchers, right? To students, to anyone who's actually interested. They may not actually be a researcher in the sort of per se. And one of the things that the roundtable, I think, helps to do is to really provoke us and make us think about the need to expand our understanding of what constitutes our archival collections, and what historical narratives that therefore can even be written using those kinds of sources. We ask, how is it possible to archive historical moments and show the different ways that an archive is not just a repository of material, but also the sum of multiple processes, people, contexts, and interests combined.
Thank you so much, Nadya, and thank you for being part of this roundtable that actually made its way through Jadaliyya's pages and the pages of the 10 Years On project with the 17 partners, institutional partners that we have. Is there anything that you'd like to share about Jadaliyya's 11th year anniversary, which we haven't really announced officially on Jadaliyya, because every single year when we celebrate the anniversary, we actually are so busy that this is getting more and more into the back seat. So we are not sure how much longer we're gonna celebrate the anniversary. But this one is telling that it's almost December and we haven't even published that official anniversary note. So anything on Jadaliyya you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I think that once again, and this roundtable is just one, small manifestation of the larger kind of connective tissue that Jadaliyya continues to encourage and foster, apart from what you were saying earlier, Bassam, that the sort of connective tissue, the sort of ligaments between all of us, right? I don't know why I've got the metaphor of the body here, but let's go with it, because I think we are all, Jadaliyya and ASI is a sort of a thinking organism. And I think that it's really significant that in some ways, maybe it's a positive thing, right? That we're not marking in the way that we've done in the past, this 11th year, because that also indicates the kind of how sort of normalized and seamlessly interwoven Jadaliyya has become into all of our lives. So I think this is a good thing, but also happy birthday, belatedly, to all of us. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Bassam. I don't know if you were speaking to me.
Sorry, I was muted. I was just
okay.
saying that thank you so much, Nadya, and that I'm assuming you know that a whole bunch of people will be descending upon your residence next year because of the World Cup. So I hope you can be ready.
Nadya, I have to tell you, we were registering for classes the other day, my cohort and I, and everyone was so excited. They're like, oh, we're going to take this class with Nadya Sbaiti. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, she's not based in DC. Is it an online course? They're like, no, it says it's in person. And then I was like, it's the Doha campus. Like, we simply cannot take a class with Nadya. And everyone was crushed.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm here this year. So, but hello, sahla virtually for anybody who wants to join in informally, I should say. Thanks, MK. You're muted, I think.
Oh, something is weird this time because we did not mute it this time. Something is odd. We're still muted?
No, we're not muted.
We will not be silenced.
Today,
no, we are muted. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Nadya, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you soon. Well, definitely next year.
Hopefully.
Yalla,
thanks, guys. Great to see you.
Okay, for the 20th episode of the Connections podcast, which, if you think about it, Connections podcast was just launched.
Hail to Mu'in.
I mean, that
Rabbani.
Man is, wow, impressive level of production. So for the 20th episode of the Connections podcast, Jadaliyya co-editor and good friend of the show, Mu'in Rabbani, spoke with Dr. Zachary Foster.
And we are actually bringing Zach in.
And in this episode, titled The Invention of Palestine, Mu'in and Zachary examined how and why the terms Palestine and Palestinian came to be contested and measured various claims in this regard against the historical record. We actually have Zachary Foster with us now to tell us more. Welcome, Zachary.
Ahlan, Zach.
Ahlan bikum. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, we are very excited about your particular interview. Mu'in kept sharing that we need to publicize this. This was an excellent interview. So would you tell us a little bit about the content?
Absolutely. So the interview was based on my dissertation titled The Invention of Palestine. And I would say the origin story of the dissertation is that I grew up with all of this Zionist mythology about the words Palestine and the Palestinians. And so I was exposed to obviously the famous Golda Meir quote, there's no such thing as a Palestinian. And if you talk to the Zionist propagandists, you'll learn that the Arabs never called this place Palestine. They always referred to it as part of Syria. In fact, they even referred to it as southern Syria. And so you're raised with this idea that Palestine never existed and they never called themselves Palestinians. And really, I just started to ask myself, okay, these are empirical questions. There are correct and incorrect answers to these questions. And so my starting point for this dissertation was, I just want to understand who used these terms, when they used them, and why. And that's really the story of the dissertation. And that's what we get into in the podcast.
Thank you so much, Zach. Would you tell us, in terms of like your own research and your own work, what are you working on? We'd like to know what our guests are working on every chance we get.
Yeah, so I would say that the one of the highlights of the dissertation is trying to understand who used the term Palestine over, let's say, the course of from the end of the Crusader period all the way to the 19th century. And so there's this mythology that no one called it Palestine. They always refer to it as Bilad al-Sham, or the lands of Sham or Syria. And so I'd say one of the key findings is that, in fact, people who were from Ramleh or lived in Ramleh or nearby Ramleh in Jerusalem or Gaza, for most of this period, say from the 12th, 13th century all the way to the, let's say, 19th century, refer to this land as Palestine. And especially if you look at the works of Khair al-Din al-Ramli, his son Najm al-Din, Yusuf Jahshan, you have a 15th century tombstone that uses the word Palestine. And remember, this is during a period when Palestine supposedly fell out of use. That's one major finding, I would say, of the work. And just I would point to a second finding, which is that, remember, over the course of the first 3-4 centuries of the first 3 to 4 centuries of Islamic rule, Palestine was an administrative district in the Muslim Empire, Jund Philistine. And so all of the biographers of the Prophet, all of the geographers, the historians, the writers of the marriage literature, the Fada'il literature, all these people were thus using the term Palestine. And so over the course of, let's say, the 11th century to the 19th century, even though Palestine was no longer an administrative unit in the Muslim Empire, nevertheless, people were still using that term because they were citing sources from the earlier period. And so for the same reason, you and I know what the term Phoenicia means. And for the same reason, you and I know what the term Mesopotamia means. Over the course of, let's say, those 8-9 centuries, when Palestine supposedly fell out of use. In fact, people were using the term Palestine for the same reason you and I use the term Phoenicia and Mesopotamia, to refer to what people called that land in an earlier period.
Thank you, Zach. That was really important. I hope that you continue your research and yes, I'm good. I'm not on mute. Now we're surprised if we are actually not on mute when we don't need to be. So basically, thank you very much again, Zach, and we hope to bring you back throughout your journey, and we will make sure that we do. We had a really fantastic time, and I know Mu'in did during the podcast, and we had a really good set of comments, so we hope to have you back.
Thanks so much. And if I can just give one shout out to Mu'in Rabbani, of all the conversations I've had about my dissertation, about my research, that conversation with Dr. Rabbani was by far the most insightful conversation I've ever had, owing to his questions and his deep reading of my dissertation. So I just want to thank him, and would encourage everyone to watch any interview ever conducted by Rabbani.
We believe it. We believe it. Thank you so much, Zach, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Take care.
It's quite the shout out there.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, he deserves it.
He does, absolutely.
He's been so prolific and so consistent, and it's been a huge part of our project, which we sometimes talk about, which involves a 24/7 channel.
Just us, 24/7.
Not yeah.
Literally just us, if you're into that. Next, we have a very special series published on Jadaliyya's Maghrib page to share with you, titled Tankra Tamazigh, Amazigh Revival and Indigeneity in North Africa. This thorough collection of articles takes on the monumental and crucial tasks of grappling with the ongoing awakening in Amazigh language and culture.
The series addresses this awakening in its various aspects, such as literature, cinema, and art, and calls for a revamping of Amazigh studies so as to prioritize the study of Amazigh cultural production in its own language.
We are delighted to have Brahim el Guabli, who wrote the introduction to the series and was one of the main forces behind the whole endeavor, with us now. Welcome, Brahim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ahlan wa sahlan, Brahim. So we are very excited on several counts. First, you are a co-editor of the Maghrib page that has been doing a fantastic job bringing knowledge production on the Maghrib to our audience. Second, you have been very active in publishing material both in Arabic and English about the Maghrib and beyond that has actually enriched this publication in ways that are very significant. And third, your attention to this particular topic, I must say, is singularly unique because of the fact that we know very little about the topic. And not only do we know very little about the topic, but there seems to be not efforts to obfuscate or prevent this discussion from happening, but there's really very little interest. And it's crucial that you have done so, and we love for you to say more about the series.
Well, thank you, Bassam. Thank you, Mary-Kate, for having me. I'm really delighted to be here with you, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be with Jadaliyya for 11 years. I would like to thank you, actually, for giving us the space to do this work. And Amazigh studies is a vibrant field. Amazigh literature and cultural production are growing, expanding. They've always been there, but they've been there in different languages, in Arabic or in French, and that's what scholarship has focused on. What we did in this dossier, which I call a dossier, is really to do an attempt at close reading in Amazigh language and providing a larger context for what the indigeneity and the revival that's happening in Tamazgha or North Africa or the Maghrib through an Amazigh cultural and linguistic lens. And by bringing this to the attention of our readers, what we're really trying to do is to ask ourselves the question, as you rightly said, Bassam, why don't we know much about this cultural production? Why isn't it being taught? Why aren't we teaching Amazigh language? It's been 60 years since the Maghreb had its independence from France, and there has yet to be a department here in the United States that teaches Amazigh language, Amazigh literature, in which actually, from a decolonial point of view, where we need to reconfigure the field to take into account the vibrancy and the reality of Amazigh studies as one of the components of this field that we call Maghrebi studies or North African studies, which I propose to actually call them Mazgha studies to broaden it, because then it will involve Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso, and other places. So yes, the bigger question is, what do we do next? What kind of changes need to happen to the way we study the Maghreb to take into account the fact that there is a literature, a cultural production, a cultural reality that's not taken into account in the way the region is studied today.
Thank you, Brahim. Would you also be kind to share with us what you might feel would be upcoming topics that have received short shrift in terms of the Maghreb that you might want to focus on, so that we would be in waiting in anticipation?
Absolutely. For example, as we just said, we just covered a very small, it's really the tip of the iceberg of what's happening in the Maghreb. So we covered a lot of stuff about literature and film, but there is much to be studied, for example, about poetry, the Amazigh poetry, Amazigh novel, Amazigh theater, also Amazigh as a space in which indigeneity, Amazigh indigeneity even as a concept. I know, for example, that some esteemed colleagues in anthropology have done a lot of work on Amazigh studies, but literature seems, and film studies seem to kind of forget that there is an Amazigh dimension to writing, to filmmaking. And this is actually my next projects for the next few years, is to do more work around Amazigh topics, around Amazigh theater, Amazigh translation, which is an empty field, literally. If you ask people who is a professional translator from or into Amazigh, good luck finding somebody. So I think we have a lot to think about. And Jadaliyya can do, or ASI can actually help with that through your series of the essential readings, pedagogy pages, and just producing knowledge and keeping it on people's radar to not forget that there is a lot that can be done outside the French and Arabic divide in the Maghreb. I see Amazigh studies as a place where these fields can be brought together by looking at multilingualism, multilingual scholarship, multilingual intellectual production, and how we can teach the Maghreb differently, how we can think through the prism of Mazgha to advance our knowledge of the place and also expand its connections to other places. I mean, just thinking from this perspective about the place of Egypt, for example, in North Africa, Amazigh activists have an entirely different take on what Egypt is, if you think about it from an Amazigh perspective. So this is the kind of scholarship that I would love to see Jadaliyya promoting, giving more attention to. Perhaps we can do something about pedagogy, how to teach the Mazgha instead of the Maghreb. That's something, for example, that can be there. Also, decolonization, and this is something that we talked about, using a decolonial pedagogy to think about space. What changes when we use the Mazgha instead of talking about North Africa, or instead of talking about the Maghreb? What kind of reconfigurations does that entail in terms of scholarly and pedagogical choices, and the way it's going to expand? By the way, I'm always about expansion and inclusion and broadening the scope of what we can do, and using all our linguistic means and tools to be able to have a better understanding of what we're doing. So taking things from an Amazigh perspective is not a chauvinistic move or a nationalistic move for me. It's a purely scholarly attention to a place and a topic that has been forgotten about for almost 50 years, except, as I said, in some in anthropological work, which has been fabulous and produced really amazing scholarship about the place, and also amongst some literary scholars in Europe whose work has also been really amazingly helpful in the work that we're doing.
Shukran, Brahim. This was thorough and extremely illuminating. We hope to not just see more of your work on Jadaliyya, but we also want to bring you back to LWA, because this aspect has been basically given such short shrift, like the entire Maghreb to begin with, and then on top of that, within the Maghreb studies, Amazigh studies. So thank you so much, and it's great to see you. The last time I've seen you, you had bigger hair, so you must have cut. I mean, I thought you wouldn't change anything since I saw you 3 or 4 years ago.
I lost my hair.
You cut it. cut it.
Well, it's nice to see you, Bassam, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
سلام دايما
مع السلامة.
حبيبي دايما
باي باي.
مع السلامة. Take care حبيبي. شكرا كتير.
All right. In 2019, Jadaliyya's Iran page launched a podcast series titled 1979 Generation, which focused on feminism and revolution by drawing on personal memory as well as activist and scholarly engagements.
Hosted by Iran page co-editor Manijeh Nasrabadi, this series brought, and I have to say, Manijeh is a fantastic human being and scholar. Okay, this is a plug. This series brought Iranian feminists who lived through the 1978-1979 revolution to share their stories of revolutionary upheaval and the contested role of women in the national liberation project, and to reflect on what feminism means to them.
After a hiatus, we are thrilled to share with everyone that Manijeh Nasrabadi is once again picking up the mic to continue this fantastic series. In fact, I had the privilege of speaking with her yesterday about her upcoming episode. Let's take a look.
And here is Manijeh's interview with, or MK's interview with Manijeh.
Perfect. All right, ready to roll?
Yes.
All right. Hello and welcome, Manijeh. Please tell us a little bit about this exciting podcast series, 1979 Generation.
Hi, MK. Thanks for having me on. So my goal with this podcast series is to really excavate a marginalized history of this revolutionary women's uprising that happened in Tehran in the immediate aftermath of the overthrow of the Shah, and to make this history widely accessible. There have been some excellent books and articles and book chapters written about this relatively recently, but they're not in the widest circulation. And so my hope was that with the format of a podcast, more and more people would be able to learn about this history. And just really briefly, beginning on March 8th, which is International Women's Day in 1979, tens of thousands of women mobilized in the streets of Tehran, and this went on for days. And so with the podcast, I'm interviewing women who were involved in these events and asking them to talk about what kinds of interventions were being made in the streets in terms of thinking through how the new society was going to be organized around the legal status of women, but also in terms of the broadest democratic demands like freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. So we're really creating a kind of archive together of these recollections, but also we're creating intergenerational dialogues about the legacy of those fleeting days of protest for the present and future. So with each episode, we kind of have this opportunity to re-examine the questions of feminism and revolution, hopefully outside of some of the typical binary ways of thinking about secularism versus Islam or tradition versus Westernization, right? We're trying to think outside of those boxes. And this is really very precious to me personally, and I hope others will find these conversations useful as well.
Amazing, absolutely important work. Could you tell our audience a little bit about this newest episode that you have coming out? After a brief hiatus, you're back. What can the audience expect of this latest episode?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be preparing for a new episode with Zora Khayyam, who was one of the organizers of the March 8th protests. And she was a member of the National Union of Women, which was a new organization launched kind of in the thick of the revolution by a Marxist organization that wanted to put its attention on organizing women. And there were a lot of debates and conflicts and tensions about how to do that and what that meant. But Zora was on the ground in those meetings, trying to figure it out along with so many others. So I'm really excited to be able to have the perspective of one of the organizers on the really dynamic and complex questions that were absolutely life and death for people in that moment, and how she remembers them and how she looks back on them today.
That's amazing. I know I, for one, am certainly looking forward to it. And finally, if you could just give our audience a sneak peek into what they can expect from future episodes.
Well, I am trying to strike a balance between interviewing Iranian women who have gone on to become feminist scholars. And if folks check out the first 2 episodes, you'll see that those are both with brilliant people, Homa Hoodfar and Shahla Talebi, who are scholars and publish in academic and other settings about Iran and about feminism. But I also want to include the perspective and voices of activists, right? People who are making different kinds of knowledge and whose memories and experiences produce different kinds of knowledge for us. So what you can expect is my continued efforts to strike that balance and to fill out a bigger and bigger picture of what happened in those days. And it's kind of an interesting approach to look at the same events, right? But through the very personal recollections of lots of different people and sort of see what emerges from that process. So
wonderful. Lots to look forward to. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the show sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, everyone, we have a very special, unexpected guest on the line. So,
Ziad Abu Rish, Jadaliyya co-editor, called when we were on the show, and then he was basically berated because he was supposed to be listening and watching LWA, which was not cool.
But then we peer pressured him into staying on the line, so
and
it all evens out.
So we're just gonna say, Ziad, do you have anything to say on this fall 2021 11th anniversary of the launching of Jadaliyya?
Other than a big happy birthday to Jadaliyya, its co-founders, its co-editors, and tens and hundreds of team members and authors that make it possible. It colonized our lives in very meaningful and productive ways, and I'm looking forward to the next 10 years. And stay tuned for some really exciting things. You haven't seen anything yet from Jadaliyya.
Wow, Ziad, all this while you're driving, or did you pull over?
I pulled over.
Okay. Safety first, everyone.
Yes, it is if you pulled over. I don't think you pulled. Okay, Habibi, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, and we're gonna hang up with you right now. We love you.
Bye, Ziad.
Okay, but I totally pulled over.
Oh, you did? Okay, you're a dad now, so I'm glad you did pull over. Tayyib, salam, okay. Salam. Thank you so much. Wow, that was fun.
That was fun.
We should do this. We should
just cold call people. See who picks up.
This was part of the original idea.
It was.
Then we got a little formal. Well, not according to some people, but we got a little serious, and I think we should relax a little bit. And one thing we didn't do this whole time, we didn't give people a break or ourselves a break with the interlude. So I'm gonna do it now.
I hope everyone feels super refreshed after that interlude. Those
so
5
good.
seconds
It
changed
feels
your
awesome.
life. All right, now it's time to focus on pedagogy.
The MESP team published a new engaging book series as a Muhammad. It's engaging books.
Or a singular book is engaging as well.
The MESP team published I think we're beginning to fall apart. I'm hungry.
The Mesby team published a few new engaging...
No, it's mine. It's mine. You've talked a lot today because you were helping me out when I was working the system. So thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. The Mesby team published a new engaging book series. As a reminder to our viewers, Engaging Books is a monthly series featuring new and forthcoming books in Middle East studies from publishers around the globe. This installation features Glencoe Library's selection of works on the theme of the Arab uprisings.
Mesby also published the fourth part of their Spring 2021 Peer-Reviewed Articles Review, or PRAR, which present a collection of journals and their articles concerned with the Middle East and Arab world. Skimming through the titles and abstracts featured in the PRAR is a great way to keep current on the state of the field, and I'll also say anyone working on annotated bibliographies at this time in the semester, also an awesome resource.
There was a bit of chocolate from the protein bar here, and I saw it, and I thought maybe I'll have time to just kind of coolly. Okay,
just
didn't
subtly.
Work. Subtle.
Yalla, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. As part of the 10 Years On project, Elizabeth Kassab put together an amazing essential readings on philosophy and the uprisings with Mesby. The post covers writings dealing with all sorts of questions, especially pertaining to what the appropriate role for the intellectual is during an uprising.
This essential readings is crucial for anyone interested in how the uprisings have affected philosophical productions in the region and the relationship between the quest for a sense of self and a post-independent state.
Now we're going to Student Corner.
We're going to Student Corner with my dear friend, my colleague, my classmate, who I called at 12:30 in the morning the other day just because I missed her, Cat Haseman. Welcome, Cat. Oh,
hi there. I'm jealous I'm not with you guys in studio today.
I know, you were here last time.
Look at her. She's in the library.
You
I
almost
can
took
tell.
over. Are you in
so
the library
studious.
or the bathroom?
Yes,
this reminds me.
yes,
this
I
reminds
am.
me of the Georgetown Library bathroom.
Library at Georgetown.
Where are you?
I'm in a little dungeon in the basement of the library.
That's what I thought. This looks like the library at Georgetown. I spent so many hours there. I thought the thing behind you on the wall looks like the stopper for the bathroom door.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The same one in the bathroom. So,
but
awesome. It's been a while since I've been on the show as the lead of the Graduate Student Corner. So I wanted to bring it back and make sure that in the middle of the semester, all of the graduate students are being sure to check out Jadaliyya and particularly the resources that are most pertinent to them. So the Foreign Policies Media Roundup is back, thanks to you, Bassam, John Hoffman, and Ziad Abu Rish. For a while there, the Foreign Policies Media Roundup was in a hiatus, but it is back, and it is a monthly roundup of news articles and other materials related to other countries around the world's foreign policies as they relate to the Middle East. And so for a busy graduate student, this is just a really great resource for staying updated on current events and trends, and then ultimately to hopefully help graduate students refine their research interests. So there are two recent foreign policy media roundups, and I encourage graduate students to go check them out. They are pretty extensive, covering all sorts of engagements and interventions in the region, and it is really interesting to scroll through and sort of stay current. So I wanted to turn it back over to Bassam and see if he had anything to say about the most recent media roundups, because I know that he's been a crucial part of making sure they include all of the most pertinent headlines. What do you think, Bassam?
The Foreign Policies Media Roundup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we started this a while ago, and John Hoffman, who was my student at George Mason, still kind of is finishing his PhD, working on his PhD, who's also published in a variety of publications, including a recent article in Foreign Policy on the UAE, for which he got a lot of critique from the UAE, but a lot of support from everyone else. This roundup was remarkable, and I think we're going to improve it going forward, because the foreign policy field is beginning, or has been changing for a while, and will change, in my view, at a faster rate, given the shrinking of the size of the pie that is the United States influence in the region, as the United States is slowly either backtracking or pulling out, or we are seeing changes that speak of a different future for U.S. foreign policy in the region. It could very well be that there'll be a reversion. We are not sure, but this is something that we are looking forward to expanding and working on more diligently, especially starting in spring 2022. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, of course. Certainly. I couldn't agree more. Thank you guys for having me. Hopefully I'll see you in person soon again.
Yes, well, the
Bye.
next time, let's just commit today. The next time,
Everyone, welcome to our production team meeting.
Muhammad, can you join us for a second? Can you join us? Next time, what we are going to do is we are going to have all four of us, MK, Muhammad, Kat, and myself, as hosts. I mean, we're hoping we're gonna do this in December. It's gonna be like the Christmas show. No, it won't. But it's gonna be yeah, okay, fine. The holidays show, whatever people are into. And we are going to. Problem is that we need one more chair because we have 3 chairs. We don't have a 4th chair. We're gonna get the 4th chair, and the 4 of us are gonna be hosts. So, Kat, you'll be here with us, and Muhammad and MK. It's gonna be a circus.
Or BYOC, bring your own chairs. Problem solved.
Yeah.
No.
I can do that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Kat.
Bye. Thanks, Muhammad. Muhammad's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
By the way, a big shout out. Shout out?
Yes.
Okay.
Shout out. Well,
Sounds-
now it doesn't sound like a word anymore.
It sounded very Arab. Shout out to Muhammad for being the engine behind the scenes, who brings us all together and organizes us as well as the guests. So thank you very much, Muhammad, for being awesome. And here's that. I added this today. I'm very excited about it.
I know, you were waiting to use it.
There were several new texts. There were several new texts out now, interviews conducted this month with a variety of authors. We will highlight. What you laughing at?
He's watching us on delay, so when he
Oh.
sees us losing
I'm
it, he
wondering.
gets it delayed. That's why.
So there were several new text out now interviews conducted this month with a variety of authors. We will highlight 2 right now, but we recommend you head over to the Newton page on Jadaliyya to see the rest.
First, we have an interview with Rose Wellman about her new book titled Feeding Iran, Shia Families and the Making of the Islamic Republic. Wellman's work contributes to the field of food studies while showing that food in Iran is about more than a means of providing nutrition. In her words, food is an agent of transformation and a vehicle for channeling divine blessing and beyond the household. State elites employ food to articulate, shape, and contest the making of an Islamic nation.
Second, in a Newton interview about the book Queer in Translation, Sexual Politics Under Neoliberal Islam, Evelyn Savci describes her ethnographic methodology of tracing the travel of the contemporary vocabulary of gender and sexual episteme and politics to Turkey. Among other things, her book explores the importance of the vocabulary queer activists employ in shaping the kinds of politics they practiced.
We will go out with a bang today, finishing the show by highlighting a few stellar articles published on Jadaliyya this month.
Our first must-read article is titled Undocumented Tunisian Migrants, Italy's Use of Inhumane Detention as a Deterrence Strategy by Jehin Kepsi, or J-Y, so Jaihin or Jihin Kepsi. This piece details the confinement conditions of detained Tunisian migrants in Italy, which are often worse than the conditions of criminal imprisonment. The piece further probes how these conditions are experienced as a form of punishment.
Our second must-read article is a film review by Huma Gupta titled Environmental Film Review, She Was Not Alone, 2020 Independent Iraqi Film Festival. The article offers insights into Basra-based director Hussein El-Assadi's short film about Fatma, a 50-year-old unmarried woman who lives alone in the Iraqi swamplands. Head over to Jadaliyya's environment page to read this review, and then consider watching the acclaimed film.
Finally, in this piece titled Islamic Republic of Rock, Ali Reza Dostar reflects on 2 years of researching the Iranian rock and heavy metal scene as part of a larger project of post-revolution cultural politics. What he finds is a complex landscape of exchange and experimentation, complicating the dominant account of a supposed opposition between underground Western music and authentic Islamic culture.
And that's a wrap for our show today, everyone.
Is it?
Yeah.
We did one interlude, and now I have a button for it, and we only did one interlude.
Next time we're gonna do 7 interludes.
I'm so disappointed.
It's okay.
يلا ماشي الحال.
It's okay.
And thank you. Did you read?
I didn't yet.
Okay, go ahead.
And thank you all for tuning in. It has been the utmost pleasure as usual.
And thank you to our lovely guests. You know, I need to enunciate better because I think I'm all my words mesh together.
Run together.
Yeah, so I should. But if I enunciate, I sound like I'm, you know.
You really
and
bear
thank
some
you
teeth when you
to
do
our
that.
lovely guests for taking. Yeah, it doesn't look.
Doesn't work.
And thank you to our lovely guests for taking time to speak with us today. Keep your eyes peeled.
Twice in one script.
I never talk like this. Keep your eyes peeled. I never talk like this. I mean, I'm fine. I'll read it.
It's
but
fine.
I never talk like this. Keep your eyes peeled for this episode's digest. Jesus. To be published in the coming days.
See y'all next month.
And we hope to come together as 4 hosts in December. So look out for that. It's going to be exciting.